Communication. Madam Superintendent, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It does feel like it's been quite a while since we've met, this being our only meeting during the month of July. I want to start by talking about budget and advocacy. Since we last met under the advocacy part, as we awaited the approval of the state budget, and I will have our Chief Budget Officer, Aldo Petronio, join me. And at this point here, I know you have been following. We, of course, have sent you information. The state budget has gone to the governor at this point. He has 10 days, and I believe he got it last Wednesday. So he has 10 days in order to make any changes. That gives time for our House and Senate to take a look at what the governor has proposed before we finally have a budget. But we will go over some of the things that we've talked about all spring. But I do want to talk about under advocacy. We had a meeting in Brockton on June 22nd here at Brockton High School, where we invited a number of people working on our coalition, looking at and carefully following the recommendations from the Foundation Budget Review Commission, looking at the process right now with supporting our schools. We had represented Worcester School District. We had a number of attorneys that are interested in coming on board. We've had a number of educational consultants that are reviewing the work happening with the Foundation Budget Review Commission recommendations and what's happening in the State House. And I will tell you, just this week, I received, we had our MASS, Mass Association for School Superintendents Conference, the first week actually starting on the 10th of July for a week. And I was approached by numbers of people asking where we're at. They are looking for Brockton to take the lead, and we will take the lead. And if you remember, we had taken a group, a number of you actually came with me to Worcester, when we presented the tale of two cities and talked about two urban districts and talked about the struggles under special education, about the low income, about English language learners. We have another invitation because cities are watching, and other districts, suburban districts also. So we have an invitation presently from Holyoke. So Holyoke is Western Mass. They're actually a commissioner's district. They're in receivership right now. The superintendent there is a friend of mine. We started as superintendents at the same time. He eventually became the receiver in Holyoke, and their mayor and their elected officials, meaning their school committee, are inviting us to come and to talk about putting together, again, support for the lawsuit. So I'm going to be opening that up to all of you. So at this point here, I am going to ask Aldo Petronio to come up, and I do want to go over with you our updated budget barometer. So I guess there is, when I sat before you a year ago at this time, there was never any good news. And if you remember, it wasn't just the state budget that didn't come through. It was also numbers of grants that we also were watching at the time. So I think we've passed out to you updated versions.
Yes, it's a budget barometer. There's also what I call a cherry sheet. There, it's the single page document. Basically what I'm showing on here, this is a condensed version of what's actually sent to the city because it has all the other city aids included. But what you see on here is we began with the governor's budget, FY 2019 governor's budget, the second column in from the left. That was what the governor proposed, and that's what the mayor based our budget on, because you don't know from that point whether you get the House budget, the Senate budget, or the conference committee budget, what actually ends up. So 172.8 million is what the governor proposed in Chapter 70, along with our charter and school choice reimbursements. Jump almost all the way to the right, you see the FY19 conference committee. Now that's what the House and the Senate have sat down and hashed out. As you remember, the House was $1.3 million higher. The Senate was about $2 million higher on the budget overall, so they hashed it out. So in the end, from the governor's budget, we ended up with about $2.5 million more in Chapter 70, about $200,000 more in charter school reimbursement, about $28,000 less in school choice reimbursement. In school choice, what we've paid out to other districts, $320 less, but about $500,000 less paying out to charter school. So overall, we ended up about $3.2 million higher than when the mayor set our budget. So if you take that and go to the budget barometer at the very top in the dark yellow begins with $159,300,000. That was the mayor's budget to us. And the mayor had said that if any additional funds came in, he would pass them our way. So the proposed budget that's in front of the governor right now, I think it's probably on day 4. He has about 10 days to approve it. Is additional $3.2 million. So if we take that, we were earlier at around a $8 or $9 million deficit. So that brings us down to a $5.8 million deficit overall. Go through and you take out the round 1 cuts, the round 2, the round 3, the round 4, all the way through. We ended off at round 6. And today I added on the round 7. So the round 7 is showing that we still have 46 pink slips out there and the amount of money that that's saving in the budget. We still have the 11 do not fills for retirements, the 4 do not fill holds for custodians, the same thing holds for administrative assistants, and the same thing with paraprofessionals. And also on June 1st, the mayor was able to give us $500,000 in FY18 so we could, from the city, so we could use that money to prepay special ed bills for next year. So adding that all in, that brings the deficit actually gone and leaves us with a positive balance of almost $1 million. On the very first page in that green box, it says FY19 budget surplus. So we have $969,000. And with that, the superintendent has the priorities now that she's looking at as far as, putting teachers in classrooms.
Before I go into that, and like I said, if you look back at last year, this is certainly better news than we were dealing with a year ago at this time. But the one thing that Aldo and I were trying to decipher today, because we're looking at places like Mass Budget, Mass Association for School Superintendents, school committees, they're trying to analyze still what is happening. So there is some money out there right now with reimbursement from students that were affected that came from Puerto Rico during the hurricane. There's some federal money, we're not quite sure about that. The state money, we are assured of that coming in. So we are looking at also some calculations for poverty. They're looking at the direct certification and districts that were hit hard by that. While I don't want to mislead anybody, and I'm not going to count on anything because we know what has happened with formulas. But at this point here, we will put together and we'll be carefully watching what the legislature is doing around studying those issues. I do want to say also publicly that I want to thank all our elected officials. I've had an opportunity to talk to Senator Mike Brady. I've had conversations at 6 in the morning with Representative Michelle Dubois. I've had numerous conversations with Representative Claire Cronin, and I've had brief conversations with Representative Jerry Cassidy. They are working very hard. But I will tell you there's been a lot of frustration on my part because, again, there are some things in this Foundation Budget Review Commission that the House is now proposing to study. And I think the time for studying has been the past 4 years. I mean, they've had these recommendations for a long time. We are hanging by a thread with trying to run a school district, trying to deal with all the new mandates. So to me, the one thing that, again, I've had conversation, the study is to go only until, I believe, December 31st, which does bring us to the end of this calendar year. And don't forget, what happens in the month of January is the governor is preparing his budget. So hopefully, with the House asking the Commissioner and DESE to study the impact of that direct certification, that poverty, other recommendations under the Foundation ELLs, under the Foundation Budget Review Commission, we should finally be getting some action. They will understand the communities that are affected. They'll understand the dollars that need to be committed. So while I'm feeling better about where we're at, do not think it's not because of places like Brockton that refuse to accept, the status quo and kick the can so-called down the road. So we're not doing that. So we will also start to put together as we start to get information as to what's happening for the rest of the summer. When we do talk about that almost $1 million, one of the things we talked about today were our priority areas, and you saw on the last page of the round 7, you see where it says custodians do not fill hold. Same thing for administrative assistants, same thing for paraprofessionals. I want to remind everybody, we made such deep cuts last year. It's almost impossible to get the work done if we're not filling some of these positions. Obviously, I need to open the doors in September, and that is my priority. But that's why you're seeing that do not fill at this time hold. So as we realize additional money or see where the areas are that we have to fill, I want to be able to move on that. That being said, I also brought together our executive team, and they've been well prepared for where the priority positions are. We presently have about 8 at the middle schools. We have about 4 at Brockton High School. And we have, and again, I'm watching the elementary numbers. So June Saber-McGuire has done an excellent job making cuts where we could make cuts because of the pullback of the kindergarten age, the bringing on of the preschool. But we're also watching in some of the areas, I'm seeing some 4th and 5th grades approaching 30, 33 kids in a class. I'm seeing some first grades approaching 31 students at the Angelo School in a first grade class. So that's unacceptable. That's why we have to look at those as priority items. So what I'd like to ask you tonight, with that surplus that we have, and also, you know, I'm trying to put a positive spin. If you can remember Title I, and I'll get back to my request. But when you look at Title I a year ago, if you look under Title IIA, we lost close to $450,000 on July 18th. We just got our estimates. Karen McCarthy has started to put together that information for me. And under the different titles, so Title I is for, again, based on our census, based on poverty, based on a number of factors, but we ended up with a loss of almost $89,000 this year in Title I. Title IIA is the support we use for our coaching, for our associate principals, for a number of supporting instruction positions. We lost $62,000. The good news is under Title IVA, that is a new category they added a year ago. It's for social and emotional support. It can be for student support. We have a gain of $275,000. So that's better than coming to you last year with the $450,000.
Staying in that same vein.
Sure.
Before I forget, Mr. Petronio, I know that the governor had proposed more money for something very similar to that from the state budget for more.
Yeah. School safety,
yeah.
Security.
Have we gotten any numbers on that?
We're hearing, and I think they're putting it under a mental health bill is what it is.
Okay.
And the governor is proposing, because of what we're seeing obviously around the country, making sure that before we have a student making a school not safe for a number of reasons, he's putting together in his budget, I don't know how that money will come to us. I'm sure we will benefit from that. But you're right, that is additional money right now that the governor, I think, is looking, and I think it's in this year's budget.
Well, it's a surplus from FY18, right? And I think he's going to turn those into grant funds. So basically, he's going to pull them out of the, FY18 surplus and set them aside, and then communities have to apply for it.
Okay.
So we will stay on top of that. I know Deputy Superintendent Thomas is already, looking at that area. So the reason I give you these totals, and we're just kind of unpacking this, is as much as I didn't like to hear 89,000 and 62,000, a net gain in Title IV, which is fairly new, is able to support instruction, is able to support social and emotional, is up by 275. It's a gain of over $100,000. So better that than, again, what we were dealing with last year.
Can we use that money for positions? Adjustment counselors?
Yes.
Okay.
But the one thing I have to do is I have to see how because we've lost some in the other
Right.
two areas. So it's a pretty open area. I mean, obviously there are mandates as to how you can spend the different monies.
Right.
So we just got this money, and as I said, I asked Karen to kind of give me an idea. The other thing I have to let you all know, that something that changed a year ago is there are amounts that have to go to private schools, in our encatchment area. and it directly is given to them. If they don't, before it was they would request it. Many times they did not request it, but we have Cardinal Spellman, Trinity Catholic, Seventh-day Adventist. Those are the St. Bridget's and Abington, actually. So that's our encatchment area for Title I, and we do share those funds. They also have entitlements that go to those areas. Karen's done an excellent job working with the private and parochial schools for their fair share. So as I said, I'm trying to put a positive spin on this. I wish we didn't lose any money, but in the end, it's a net gain for us of over $100,000. So we'll work those figures and get back to you. Getting back to my request from you is, as we wait for the governor and the state to finish their budget process, we want to be able to move on this quickly. We're quickly approaching the beginning of August. We do have 46 teachers that are out. I would like to request the opportunity to use 20, to bring back 20 positions, and I'm not saying I'm bringing back every one of them. I need to study them at the middle, the high school, and the elementary to be able to, you know, make class sizes appropriate, because again, we're still registering students. So I want to start to move on them. But with the surplus of over almost $1 million, I'd like to be able to use that at my discretion to bring back our teachers at the middle of the high school and the elementary, up to 20.
Where are we with the sub-budget?
We've replenished what we've taken. So when we talked about the monies coming in, if you remember, we hedged our bets in a number of areas. Aldo, you can speak to that, but that money has gone back to where?
Our budget is at $588,000. We have spent this past year at $1 million. So we were budgeted again for FY18 for $588, but that budget was overspent. So we began this year with $1.5 million in there, and then we, as we were trying to, you know, settle our budget,
we used it to
we
bring
brought
back
down.
teachers.
Yes, exactly.
That's exactly what we did.
So we'll be starting the year with $588,000.
How much would 20 positions translate into monetarily?
About $850,000.
So that would basically spend everything?
And that would
Almost.
still leave out, if you take 20 away from 46, you still have 26 positions that are out.
You know, you are asking to be able to bring back teachers at your discretion. You and I had a conversation before about my concern with the unknown being down a classroom teacher. Is that a position that you're considering filling?
The unknown was actually on the list with, I believe it was their grade 4 and 5.
Okay.
So June Saban-McGuire had given me at this point, and like I said, people are still registering. Mm-hmm. You know, this was as of Friday. I think she looked at the numbers and saw where the high numbers were and labeled 10 positions that were concerning at the elementary level. 2 were from the unknown. I think I have the list here. I just assume not go over the list at this point because it's subject to change,
okay.
Which is why I want the discretion to be able to look at those numbers as they change.
Thank you.
And I will talk to you, Lisa, about a meeting we had with the state, a very positive meeting about the unknown. I was very pleased.
Good.
That was last week. So, here it is right here. The schools that we were looking at, and I won't give grades, but we had the Angelo, the Gilmore, the Baker, the Arnone, the Raymond twice, the Davis, the Hancock, the Angelo, the Kennedy. So as you can see, it's a wide range of schools that have class sizes either approaching 30 or over 30. I have one that had average class size of 5th grade, 34 students in it. So these are areas that we're going to have to make some decisions, and as I said, I was actually hopeful I could bring back 25 teachers out of that 46. I know Mr. Petronio was concerned because next year we're fighting the same budget deficit if things do not change. But we have to open the doors and we have to make sure we saw what it was like this year. If you remember, when nothing transpired last year, that was when we went into our substitute budget, and it was actually later in August that we wanted to be. I'm hoping this is going to be settled within the 10-day period that the governor has, and then hopefully the state will finish the budget process.
Mr. Sullivan?
If I'd just like to, I'll make the motion to bring back the 20 teachers, but I'd like to make one statement first. Although this is probably the best budget we've seen in the last 2 years, I don't think we've seen any green on any budget that we've seen. This is almost fabulous.
Well, Correct. The fact that the House increased it and the Senate went even more shows that I think that the advocacy that we've been pushing and fighting them and been in the news, I think they've looked and said, you know, we've got to send some more money their way because they know that we're going to sue. And
It's worked, though. I think both of you have done a good job.
a study that was done by the Mass Budget and Finance private think tank in Boston went through all the districts. They said Brockton is underfunded $49 million per year. That's how much they've shorted us. The fact that the formula is not working. They specifically mentioned Brockton. The formula is not, so if they had given us the proper health insurance increases, the proper ELL and SPED and poverty increases, we would have $49 million more dollars. So I told them I would take 20%. I said, give me 10. I'll but
My question, Aldo, was you had mentioned the governor has 10 days.
yes.
Is 10 days to approve it and sign it? Is that what that
Yes.
is? And 4 days have gone by?
I think 4 or 5, when it was last Wednesday, I think.
I think it was Wednesday. It was definitely not Thursday, Friday, so it's either Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm just,
Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. So today would be the 4th business day. But it's,
What's the chances of him changing his mind and not giving us this?
I have no idea.
But it could be, it could happen.
I don't see why he wouldn't. There's not a revenue problem with the state. So,
and he couldn't target Brockton. I mean, you have to, it's a
Right.
formula.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'd like to make the motion to bring back 20 teachers.
Why don't we first let Lisa chime in and then...
Okay.
Wait till after the motion. It didn't have to do with the motion.
And I want to say, when we say teachers, there could be a guidance counselor in there. I know the high school had a guidance person, so I'm talking our professional staff when I say teachers.
All right. Why don't we do this?
Change the motion?
Well, the mayor has just arrived, so why don't we take a 1-minute recess, and then I will slide into my spot, and then the mayor can come up here. So why don't we just do a quick 1-minute recess? Can you make a motion for a 1-minute recess?
Yes, I'd make a motion for a recess
Okay.
at 7:30.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, I will switch seats, and the mayor will move into the chair position. Okay, 1-minute recess. Thank you.
I will apologize to the members of the committee for being a little late this evening. I'm sorry. We had a program at the library tonight, an opening of the Frederick Douglass exhibit that I had committed a long time ago to attend, and I got in and out as fast as I could, but still had me running a few minutes late. Ms. Plant, did you have the floor when we took the break? Or?
Well, I deferred so that Tim could. He was about to make a motion, and my comment had nothing to do with the motion.
Okay, so so right now we are discussing the superintendent's request to bring back
20, I asked for 20 teaching professional positions out of the 46 that remain. RIFT, I said I wouldn't necessarily use every one of them, but I want the ability. Our next school committee meeting isn't until August 14th, and I want to be able to be prepared, to bring teachers back if need be. I talked about reviewing elementary. There was some numbers coming in from middle school, and I believe I had 4 positions from the high school today. During our executive team, we were reviewing the positions.
So right now there are 46 positions that have not been recalled?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And
It's right here there.
are you okay if I ask a question or two, Tim, before you go? Okay. So how many, could you update us on where we're at on MTAs and paras? Because I am extremely concerned that MTAs and paras give us a lot of bang for the buck, and when we're living with larger class sizes, having those extra professionals in the classroom makes a big difference. And
Well, Mayor, I will have to tell you that in speaking with the principals, one of the most important things, and I heard this all year long, was that they were struggling because they did not have additional support in the schools. There wasn't an extra para. There wasn't an extra MTA. This was, it didn't matter what group. We sat down with every one of the schools. I brought the whole executive team in, and we heard that from every single school. So, while I recognize that, we had discussion about it today during executive team, in looking to, if we were going to have larger than not class sizes, then we would have to look at bringing back MTAs and paras. So my asking for the 20 was looking at, just giving us some room to look at some priority positions. But again, we'll look across the board at our MTAs, and I think it was MTAs is what we were looking for.
so MTAs and paras, and I mean, the other concern I've got to share with the committee is that every year I worry about the sustainability of these positions. We're in this vicious cycle of spending every dime we've got to recall teachers to turn around and lay them off again the next year. And it's, and Superintendent, I understand that you're doing the best you can for the classroom. But, I mean, at some point we've got to bite the bullet and get by without a couple positions and think about spending the money elsewhere, because if we're just going to lay them off again at the, this 100 layoffs every year and see how many we can bring back, it's brutal. And I know it's not our fault. The state is underfunding us. But I am worried about sustainability. Bringing positions back just for the sake of letting them go again next year doesn't seem to be a great course of action. Ms. Plant?
I certainly agree with your sentiment, and I don't think anyone here enjoys having to keep doing this every year. But when I do see what our classroom sizes are, and I do recognize the value of our MTAs and our paraprofessionals, we also recognize that we can't have just a para or just an MTA run a class. So if in some of these instances we're looking at eliminating a classroom, I mentioned a specific concern at the Arnone School, which we already had some great concerns about. And if we're not recalling an actual teacher, then I know that those classroom sizes are still going to be big. Perhaps you can put somebody in there, but that's still a large classroom size, which for some of our students is a distraction just to even being in a larger classroom.
And I understand all that. I think you get 2 MTAs for the price of 1 teacher, and you get more back.
That doesn't work. 2 MTAs equal, that's our joke in childcare. Oh, do 2 aides equal a teacher with 2 MTAs?
No, it doesn't, but I know that you're not going to solve 100 overcrowded classrooms with 4 teachers. But 20 MTAs or paras put into 20 classrooms helps those teachers manage a class that's too large by having the second adult aide. I understand they're aides. They don't replace certified teachers for a minute. I know that. But I also know if a teacher's got 31 or 32 kids in a class and they're able to divide up and have the MTA or the para working with one small group while they work with another group, a very difficult situation for the teacher gets a little more manageable. I mean, I think they do bring value. We need everybody. We need all hands on deck.
I'm not sure if the superintendent does see a way that maybe we are looking at bringing back, I mean, you did have MTAs on your list?
We absolutely did. We had a discussion. We put priority items up on the board today. As I said, we looked at about 8 positions at the middle school. There were 4 at the high school. And I just kind of read to you some of the places where the class sizes were getting larger. There were about 10 at the elementary. I'm not saying we're bringing every one of those back. I wanted some leeway to be able to look and see where the priorities end up being, if we could move, some of the classrooms around. And our next group, and that's why I had Aldo Petronio talk about, are there other funding streams? Now, I can't say, and last year I'll be the first one to say we listed 11 different places we thought money was coming from, and not one of them came through. And that was when we went in, we went into the sub-budget last year in August just to open the doors, if you recall. So, we're not quite at that position this year. We are looking at some money coming in possibly with our direct certification. I know they're studying that in this budget. I'm not talking about the review for the budget for next year. We're looking at money coming from the state and federal government. The federal government money really is coming for FY18, not FY19. And the state money is for FY19, and that is for the hurricane victims. I don't know, you're looking at that maybe being about $270,000?
Less, about 240,000.
Too bad they didn't do that when we took the students from Haiti a few years ago, huh? Mr. Minichiello.
So before you arrived, Mayor, I asked the question, basically, what does 20 positions translate into in terms of funding, which translates into almost all of the surplus, not quite, but almost. What if we authorized up to 13 or so and kept a little portion to review for MTA or para positions or something like that, so that our next school committee meeting is in what, 3 weeks? So, by then, we could relook at this and see if there's any more funding, or if not, then where that last, portion of funding, should go, I guess.
I don't know what the exact number is, but I want to be supportive of the superintendent, but I would feel a lot better if we left ourselves a little leeway for the next meeting to be able to make decisions, or even
we'll start to look and get back
14, 15. I would just like to see us hang on to just a little flexibility for the next meeting.
13 or 14 would, I don't know, I think would give you enough to be able to plug some holes.
I'll report back to you on the 14th exactly. Okay. We're meeting next Tuesday we have everybody back. June Saber-McGuire was on vacation this week, so we will have all of our administrators back, and we'll give you exactly what we're bringing back and what the numbers are.
So,
and we'll take a look at the MTAs and see if we can start to bring back some support positions.
So 13 not being I guess, a traditionally negative number. Mr. Sullivan, why don't you think about a motion for 14?
What I was going to do was change the 20 teachers to, it was going to be 20 professional staff and/or teachers, and I'll just change it to 14 teachers and/or professional staff.
I think the school committee wants to be supportive and give you as much as we can, but I think a little bit of financial flexibility for the August meeting, when we know if the governor signed the budget, maybe Aldo has identified some additional funds by then. I'm really afraid to take the chance of spending money we don't have, or spending all we do and then identifying some other needs that we won't have any money to pay for.
I'll work with that.
Can we work with 14 for this meeting, and then, but
yes,
to be revisited at the next meeting? Okay. How about a motion then, Mr. Sullivan?
The motion that we bring back 14 teachers / professional staff at this meeting.
You know what, on the motion, I just have one other question. Superintendent, would any of these be adjustment counselors?
We had one guidance counselor, but we did talk about additional adjustment counselors, but they weren't part of this first round. Guidance counselor, I just said. I'm sorry, yes. For the
Adjustment
South
or
Adder half,
guidance?
It was guidance. Correct.
Guidance.
So
They
do we
had-
have any adjustment counselor positions that are still out right now?
We have no we did not cut any adjustment counselors, but over the past year, we had cut a couple of them.
Yeah.
I believe somebody's sharing a couple of job shares.
I mean, I just, in some of our prior meeting conversations about school safety and identifying students that are at risk and trying to get students engaged, and I mean, this is something school districts are taking a hard look at all over the country. How do we, if we've got kids that have got issues going on, that we try to identify them and engage them earlier? And I got a feeling our caseloads are very high for our adjustment counselors.
They're high, but one of the things you'll hear me talk about tonight is our focus right now has been to really support our staff. I have had what's called the Superintendent's Advisory this year, which involved teachers. It wasn't administrators, it was teachers from all of the schools. And at the last meeting, we kind of summarized really a lot of the talk that went on all year long and a lot of the frustration. And some of it, and I'm going to use the term tools in the toolbox. So our professional development is focused around social and emotional learning, trauma-sensitive schools. We've had, for our administrators, we did it in our principal academies at the end of the year. We have people coming in that are actually going to work with our staff in how to, deal. So it isn't just having the adjustment counselor, who is, again, it's a former job I held. I know what kind of support that is for the classroom teacher and for our administration. So we also have to start to really resource our, if we're talking about class sizes of 28, 29, and 30, that's where the teachers are getting very frustrated with those youngsters that need the additional support. And you know what, Mayor, the other thing that I'll say is when I'm out there talking to colleagues, we're so far ahead of the game with adjustment counselors, meaning we never made that a throwaway position. And when things got tough in Brockton, and yes, we cut 15% across the board last year, and that impact of the adjustment counselors was clearly felt across the district. And that's why we did not, this year, there was not one elimination of an adjustment counselor. So we are looking to build that back. But with the 14 that you're giving me, and they're correct, there were 2 guidance counselors, one from the high school, and one because remember the number of students going to South. From the changing of the 6th grade at North.
Right now, you get 12 classroom teachers and a couple of guidance
2,
counselors.
correct, that's what's on the list.
And with the ability to consider, to continue the discussion at the August meeting.
Well, you mentioned, or Mr. Gormley mentioned the governor's, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
The
Bill.
Title IV money we can spend on that. We possibly have $100,000 we could spend on an adjustment counselor,
Okay.
as well as money that the governor, you probably caught this too, is set aside for
Right.
school districts to hire more support staff
no, I was
around
already
these things.
thinking
So
about
I think
that
we
might
might
be a
have
place
some
we
money
get some
coming in
for
to increase that number above what we
Yeah.
had previously. So I think maybe it might be prudent to hold off until the next meeting to add those people, just so we can get.
Oh, no, I
classroom-
wasn't, I just wanted to discuss it, that's all.
Oh, I thought you meant right, with this
No,
number.
I'm
Okay.
fine with the 14 that's on the floor. I just wanted to talk about it. So the motion on the floor by Mr. Sullivan is to approve the recall of 14 positions, and based upon the discussion, that's probably 12 teachers and 2 guidance counselors. So with that motion's on the floor, do we have a second? Second. Mr. Minchella's second. All in favor?
Thank you.
Approved.